Kubisys, the power to create the most accurate and complete environments. Kubisys has been a company for about 7 years. The initial product, Kubisys Thin Capture, was introduced at Interopt October 2010. Since then, we focused on the mid-market because our technology is unique. We go about this provisioning of environments in a unique way. Today, if you have the issue of not enough environments, you'll simply look for more storage, consulting resources. We really approach this from a different perspective. For that reason, we've really focused on the mid-market initially, going to C-level events, because our technology covers both the operations and the application side. We really need the buy-in from the C-level executive. So we've been fortunate at many of these events to have been selected for one or two of the awards which they give out, and we're very proud that our message is getting out there. But more importantly, if you look at the awards we win, it's most innovative, best mid-market, breakthrough technology, and in 2013, Gartner selected us to their cool vendor list, one of only 5 companies in the DevOps category. So you can see we go about this provisioning from a different perspective. And the problem that we really solve is, today you have a production environment which people work very hard to keep up and running and secure. But when changes and upgrades and new software developments need to be added, whether you do in-house development or work with third parties, you'll need some development environments, you need some staging QA, you may need some training environments. And of course the goal is always have them as close to production as you can. But companies struggle with the amount of resources they're going to provide in order to not only set up these environments, but to make them look like production, and then to try and maintain them and keep them in sync from a data perspective. So what Kubisys has come up with is a software solution. Today it's in an appliance. And what our solution allows you to do, it allows you, once you simply install our appliance within your data center behind your firewalls, it allows you to point to your production and select any server or set of servers from your production. And we spin these servers up within our appliance. We fully automated that process. For example, if you look at the upper bubble, and these environments can be used for staging, QA, development, training, any place you would like to have environments on demand that look, act, and feel just like production. And by that I mean, if you take that upper bubble, that staging bubble, let's assume that's a full application stack. Has your database server, has your application server, maybe a web front end, your Active Directory, it has maybe a couple dependencies. That staging bubble represents a complete application stack. Well, inside our appliance, that environment will have the same IP and MAC address. It will have the same data. It will have the same networking configuration and the same interdependencies as it has in production. For all intents and purposes, it will run, look, feel to the end user as if they are working within production. And the really unique thing is, in our thin capture mode, and we have 2 modes, and I'll explain them both. In the thin capture mode, which is our original offering back in October 2010, we can spin these environments up really in 20 to 30 minutes. And that's really the key factor here. And somewhat like a magic trick, as I explain it to you, you'll say, wow, that's really creative. That's interesting. We're not basing this on any new cutting edge technology. In fact, we are leveraging existing solid technology because we're supporting Windows environments. We're leveraging the VSS Shadow Services feature in Windows. And we're at virtualization. Today we have OpenZen inside our box. Now we do have 3 patents that have been approved, but that is all in the automation and coordination of these technologies. So a very simple slide rocket presentation will give you a kind of a pictorial of how we do what we do. A very simple example. Once again, this represents our thin capture mode. So how does it work? There's really two steps. The first is called discovery. That is a one-time event, takes 2 to 3 minutes, and think of it as you discover each of the servers that you are going to either capture now or in the future. So you're building a library inside our appliance of the servers that you'll be capturing. So for this example, we use an app server, a DC server, and a database server. And we select them simply through our UI. With the mouse, we select those to be discovered. We click on a discovery button, and then leveraging WMI, we simply probe and we come up with the number of CPUs, the RAM size, the disks and volumes, the network interfaces, IP and MAC address, and we catalog those inside our appliance. And that's all there is to the discovery stage. Only takes a couple of minutes, and now you're ready to capture. Using the same example, our DC server, our app server, our database. Once you push the capture button, we leverage that VSS and we take a production snapshot that stays on that host server. Very little pull, and it's just a matter of configuring your VSS. We then thinly provision virtual disks inside our box, and once again, all this is automated. We then, whether it's a physical or virtual server, we P2V or V2V on the fly, and we spin them up inside our box. We then automated the spin up of a virtual switch, which mimics the networking. We install the hardware drivers, and then we simply boot up the machines inside our box. And there you go. You have that environment up, running, looks and feels just like it does in production. To give you another visual, this is a picture of our UI. And if you look on the left-hand side where it says production view, those icons of servers, if you could scroll down in that screen, those are all the servers that you've discovered. Remember, the discovery is that one-time function where you simply need to go in, click on the server, and everything else is automated, and we store that information. Once you select the servers from the production view, you simply push a capture button. If you look now at the top there, that's called the navigation bar where it says thin capture bubble. As you push that capture button, it'll start as a gray bubble. When it turns orange, it means the servers you selected are now up and running inside the environment, inside the bubble. The nice thing about these bubbles is you can turn them on, you can turn them off, so you can catalog environments, you can name them, you can timestamp them. A great feature is you can security rights. So if you're working with outside consultants or you're doing some UAT testing, you can give individuals permission only to access the environments, the bubbles, if you will, that you'd like them to work in, with no fear that they can ever work outside those bubbles or in any way affect production. If you clicked on that thin capture orange bubble, the servers you see in the shadow environment, those are the servers that you discovered initially. You then capture them. Those 10 servers in this example are running inside that orange thin capture bubble. And once again, from the user perspective, it's as if all data is available, all networking is the same, all functionality is the same. Now, one way to access these environments is simply select a server from the shadow environment, click on the server, and a console button will pop up. You simply click on the console button, and it takes you right to the console of that machine. So now you're working from that machine inside the bubble. I will show you a couple others. It's a very flexible solution. We talked about two modes. Thin capture, that's our initial offering. That's the one that we just went through the example, where you take that VSS snapshot and it resides there, and we point back to the data. So we read only from that snapshot the data required for the test, and all writes go in our box. And that takes 20 to 30 minutes. And that's really designed for that agile DevOps approach, where you can quickly spin up an environment, apply a patch, do an upgrade, and then you simply delete the environment. No need to maintain it. You can spin it up again. But customers came to us and said, you know what? We'd like to keep these environments up for longer periods of time. We have very long UAT testing cycles. We have some long development cycles. So we came up with a feature called Save Shadow. You can think of it as thick capture. The difference here is once we take that snapshot, we actually then bring it into our appliance. Of course, that takes more than 20 or 30 minutes, depending on the amount of data. Could be a few minutes, a couple hours, could be overnight. But the nice thing about thick capture is once you bring that snapshot inside the appliance, all resources are then local to the box. And at that point, what especially is nice about that feature, it allows you to make multiple thin captures off of the thick capture inside the appliance. So not only does the environment stay up for long periods of time, weeks, months, it also allows you on demand within 20 minutes to spin up thin captures off of that thick capture. So what are the primary use cases? As I said earlier, it really falls on two sides. From the application standpoint, development sandboxes, QA, UAT, of course, for all application patches and upgrades. And think how nice it is for training, if you can train individuals with real production data. From the infrastructure, they also have the server level patches, and a lot of that is really generated from the need to stay compliant. Configuration changes. Think about those complex changes, schema changes in Active Directory, Exchange, things that traditionally are very tricky and very difficult. Our solution allows you to do that. Think how nice if you had a problem in production. Today, those issues are very difficult to replicate in dev or tests. With our solution, it allows you to replicate those issues that you are currently having in production, isolate them in their own bubble, and really allows you a time saver of then troubleshooting what the issue is, knowing you won't affect negatively production. Now, our solution is not a DR tool. There's no way to publish back. There's no way to push a button and publish anything back to production. We protect production. But it is a tool that allows you to test your DR plan. If you have a plan in case of emergencies, our solution allows you actually to run that plan by in real time and real captures. Do you know all the servers and the sequencing to get up that critical app? Our solution allows you to test that. So let's talk a minute about development. Companies struggle, but they figured out in their process to take it from development through deployment into production, whether they're doing the development in-house or working with a third party. What we say is when you get to that moment of deploying into production, you have that package ready to go. Wouldn't it be nice if you could spin up a production-like replica so you can test drive that deployment package? You could validate it right up front, whether it's something's going to affect production or not, and then feel secure about releasing it. It will avoid those sloppy deployments. Well, that value prop is usually pretty easily understood. Well, our stand is, if you think it's important to have a last mile staging that looks like production, wouldn't it be nice to have your QA and test people working within those same environments? Think how that would not only make their jobs more efficient, but look at the mitigation of risk. And if that makes sense to you, why wouldn't you have your developers working in production-like environments? Think how that would streamline their work. So our solution is a game changer. It is something that will take you along that DevOps path of really consolidating some of your processes and increasing and bettering your efficiencies. One of the examples we like to represent this is a use case from one of our legal customers who had a SharePoint plugin which they purchased, did a lot of customization. When the company went to deploy it, the third party, it affected production, and it was a problem throughout the organization. So the vendor pulled it out, went back to the drawing board, In the interim, the company had purchased us because they were having this similar issue with other third parties and other applications that they were dealing with when they needed to come up with environments in order to test additional patches and or upgrades. So when the vendor came back with a 30-page document of how they were going to safely deploy it, they spun up a Kubisys environment that represented their SharePoint environment. I will show you that in the next slide. They then took their 30-page document, applied it to our environment, and they actually crashed it. And they were able to, though, just simply spin up another environment. They didn't affect anything in production. They made some changes. And after a couple crashes, they were able to safely deploy into the Kubisys environment. They simply followed the same steps and safely deployed it into production. And they were coming up on the 7th to 8th month from the initial deployment. And with the Kubisys solution, in less than a week, they were able to safely deploy it into production. So from a business value, it's that time to market. You know, how it's the end business user to get that plug-in 7 months sooner. What would that have meant to the business? Now, everything in this orange square is what was captured in order to test out that plugin. And I'm going to go from left to right. They captured user workstations along with a vendor workstation because the vendor was doing the work. Their entire SharePoint, their CompliGuard. They also had an SQL server with 4 terabytes. They captured that. And also a couple domain controllers. So for this particular use case, that was needed to spin up in the bubble in order to test that plugin from end to end. So our solution allows you to do that end-to-end integration testing. Now, reminder, you can capture any single server, any set of servers, or any multiple set of servers that have dependencies, whatever needed for your use case. Quick moment on development environments. Our solution allows developers not only to have their own environment, but really to self-serve themselves. So if you have a stretch in your operation resources, it allows your operation team maybe to maintain a golden environment and then allow developers, whenever they want to, on demand, just go in and grab a copy of that. So it doesn't matter whether you have 2 developers or 30 developers. They can all access the golden environment and have their own environments on demand. Developers who are sitting and waiting for environments just add up their salaries and estimate the time, and that's the revenue lost. So just as a reminder, you can point our solution at your production environment or any golden environment that you maintain. The example we use here is one of our long-term customers who really are an agile shop and doing a major AX rollout. And in this case, a development team of about 9 developers. They do weekly sprints. So on Monday, they each have their own environment. They do their weekly sprint. On Friday, they check in their work. It gets compiled, run through a last mile staging, deployed over the weekend. And Monday morning, they've automated. So each developer, when they come in, they will have a new environment that includes all the previous week's work. So not only are they doing weekly sprints, they're doing weekly deployments. So you can imagine how productive your development team can be. This particular slide is not that use case example. I've added this because people struggle with the fact, you can't capture, I have too much data. Well, this is an example from an architectural engineering firm, and you can imagine how much data they have acquired. And in this case, this represents their core environment. So everything in this orange bubble they captured included developer workstation, their SharePoint, 2 ERPs, their Exchange, a file server, and their entire Active Directory. So this represented their core environment. So what that allowed them to do is to thick capture this core environment, and then on demand, any of the groups could spin off a thin capture at any time, either a subset of this or the whole environment. So they always had, and they refreshed it weekly. So regardless whether you're on the operation side or the application side or development, you always had an opportunity to get a fresh environment to work in that represented your production. Today we offer the X2500, and we had other models in the past that weren't as robust, and with the feature of the Save Shadow, everybody embraced that feature. So therefore, at this point, the 2500 is the only appliance which we are offering. It has 256 gigabytes of RAM and 16 terabytes of raw storage, about 11 to 12 usable. And that's really sufficient for our customer base. We do have customers that do some kind of exciting things. Some can leverage their SAN. Once again, it's a very flexible solution. Depending on your use case, it can be adapted. We talked about how you access these environments. One way was through the UI, through the console button, which I pointed out in an earlier slide. Another way is you simply can port forward into the environment, into the bubble, and we make that very easy for you to do. But probably the most common way is you capture your workstation, then you can RDP port forward from your workstation into your workstation inside the bubble, and you can work from inside the bubble. Today we offer the X2500. We have 3 software licensing. One is a source server. What that basically means is that you tie the licensing to a particular set of servers. Those are the servers you're going to want to make multiple copies of, or a subset of those servers, and it starts at a 20 server license. A portable license simply means you can run up to 20 servers at any one time, and it does not tie down to the servers that you're capturing. And unlimited just simply means that you can point our solution at any servers, capture any servers from your environment, and run as many as you can, up to obviously the capacity of the box. From a professional services standpoint, we offer training. We do project-based work. I mentioned if you want to leverage your SAN or you want to do something unique that's not part of the out-of-the-box features, we'd be happy to work with that with you. And the capture, creation, tuning is really where we administer the box for you. This is a great way for you to get off the ground from day one, being efficient while your team, adapts and adopts the technology. Also, if you're struggling for resources, you can look at us as an extension of your IT department. You simply request the environments you're going to need. We'll spin them up for you and hand them over to the end user. From a costing perspective, we would discuss with you, and depending on the licensing model and and how you're going to use it, it's to give you some idea. The MSRP would run anywhere from about $80K to about $170K. That is a one-time cost. There is 18% support and maintenance that's paid yearly. There are discounts available depending on whether you be a reference account, some terms of engagement, and terms of payment all come into play. From an ROI perspective, on a basic level, we replace servers. So if you have many environments up and running that you maintain, that you use infrequently, you can eliminate those and replace those simply with our appliance. Gartner says for every server you have up and running, it costs you $7,000 to $9,000 per year. So you simply just swap in the numbers. It's, we clearly would save you money there, but we actually think cost is kind of third on the list, we believe. Yes, it will save you money in all cost categories, including manpower, maintenance, power, licensing, storage. However, that improved time to market to enable you to focus on those complex changes safely. In order to do that troubleshooting of production, that time to market, get those projects out quicker and safer. We think that's a high value proposition. But at the end of the day, it's a mitigation and reduction of risk, because your developers can develop against production-like data and infrastructure, because your QA and tester are testing against production data and infrastructure, and because your last mile staging is really a replica of your production. It really reduces risk across the board while it increases and improves your efficiencies. Just 2 quick slides from a couple customers from a recent event we went to, just to kind of show you the scope and span of some of our business value. In one case, a very large flooring distributor. And in the e-commerce world, they really exploded in that business side, and they've done a lot of changes. And with those changes came problems. So they had outages, and their outages would run 10 to 12 hours, seemed to always hit them on the weekend. So they purchased Kubisys really to focus on their e-commerce website to make sure that they would eliminate their outages. Well, once they purchased, they went to 0 outages, and their own numbers, they felt in $3 million plus conservatively, they saved in lost revenue by installing our application. Kind of the other side is a pharmaceutical company who has a lot of applications. A lot of them are small, but because of compliance, they all have to have test environments available anytime there's any patching or upgrades, and everything must be kept current. So this particular company was spending a lot of money on outside consultants to maintain these test environments, even though some of them they used infrequently. So you can see the numbers there, $60K a month support, $220 for the QA support, and $20K per month for refreshing, per year for refreshing. After they purchased Kubisys, not only did they have 0 defects introduced to production, which was a byproduct plus for them, but their support costs went down to $15K, and they eliminated all the other costs. So in real numbers, they saved close to $800,000, and that's a year-over-year savings. As far as our sales process and next step, we'd like to introduce it at the highest levels in an organization we can, and then we would like to introduce it to the key members of the IT staff, both the applications and the operations side. At that point, we'll answer all their questions and have them understand this is really a technology that bridges those two sides together for the better of the organization. If they see value, we'd like to understand what that value and those use cases are, and we'll share some of our customer experiences. We will then confirm, the size of the appliance, the licensing, and at that point we will also give them a proposal that represents the value we believe they can receive, both on the short term and long term. If we're in agreement there, we will go forward at no cost and obligation, and we'll perform a proof of concept on site. And for this, we will do most of the heavy lifting, which really allows your resources to be freed up until it comes to the point where we spin up these environments, we'll hand them over. You can validate, they say what we say they are, they work like they're supposed to work, they do represent your production. At that point, hopefully you process our invoice. If for any problem or reason or change in direction, again, there's no cost or obligation. POCs take usually between 1 to 3, 4 weeks. Post POC, we go to what we call the production rollout phase. We will help work with your team to make sure they can continue to utilize our solution post proof of concept, and then we get your projects in line and up and running for you. And of course, we will provide you ongoing support. If you have any additional questions, or you'd like us to introduce, or you'd like any additional documentation, please follow up with Kim Verhagen. She's at kim@kubisys.com. Thank you very much for your time. We look forward to speaking with you.